Okay, I'm going to start this morning by welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Krap. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here today. This is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the words of the Buddha. We start with meditation and then we move into more of a study group where a lot of the other classes and courses and retreats I teach in a more traditional way. I'll teach you guys about how I actually share the teachings in this class after we do our meditation. But let's start with our meditation, which is breathing mindfulness meditation. This is one of the primary trainings that the Buddha used in order to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. All your anger and sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings are eliminated from the enlightened mind, and you do that through training the mind. So meditation is an important part of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into meditation. If you'd like to chant along, we have chants over there on the table. There's a laminated sheet that has the chants that I'm doing. It's in the Pali language, but you'll see the English translations there as well. So you're welcome to help yourself to the chants if you'd like, and you can follow along and even chant along if you'd like. After the chanting, then I'll provide some guidance on the meditation itself while we're actually meditating. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet and we're all just meditating together. Those of us here at the temple and everyone joining online will just all be meditating at the same time. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting as well. The chanting isn't mystical or magical. It's not a prayer. It's not worship or anything like that. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory because he taught orally. So they would recite the teachings every 2 weeks as a way to commit them to their memory and be able to practice them. Because the ability to write teachings down or write anything down didn't exist in that region of the world 2,500 years ago. So it wasn't until later that that technology made its way to that region of the world and they were able to write things down. But during the Buddha's lifetime, he helped them to learn and remember the teachings by chanting them. So today we don't need to chant in order to remember the teachings. We have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this. But I still do chanting because it helps to get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to chant along, you're welcome to. Then after the chanting, as I mentioned, I'll be giving you some guidance. And then now you might be interested to know about, kind of like how to position the body for meditation, because oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guidance on the seated position, but there are 4 positions to meditate in. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. The seated position is where people will typically learn, either sitting on the floor in a chair. If you're at home, you might be on a sofa or a bench or something like this, even in a wheelchair or something of this nature. So if you're on the floor, you might just be sitting with a cushion under your rear with your legs lightly crossed. If you have them too tight, it can impede the circulation and it can cause pain in the body. So you're not interested in being in pain. So if you just lightly cross your legs, this is usually best. And some people like to put their legs off the mat, which helps to get the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and provides the ability for the circulation to flow more readily. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together. So if this is helpful for you, you could use this. You could put this in your lap, but it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here too. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up or rest their hands comfortably in their lap. You can really sit however you like. It's really whatever's comfortable for you, including those of you guys in the chairs. You can sit however you like. And for those of you guys at home that might be in a chair or something like this, sometimes people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. But again, it's all up to you how you sit. You would like the lower body and the hands and arms to be comfortable and relaxed. The upper body should be erect, with your sternum up and your shoulders back. This helps to keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind can be overactive or uptight. So you like the upper body to be erect, which keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. And then this will ensure that you can actively train your mind during the meditation. So again, I'm going to chant to ease us into meditation. And then afterwards, I'll come in with some guidance on the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung วันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวาปนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสขะโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรภูริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I'd like to once again welcome all of you guys, those of you guys here at the temple and those of you guys joining us online. Welcome to everyone, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to everyone. For those of you guys that are here for the first time, I'd like to just let you know that there's a bathroom in the very back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to use the restroom at any time. There's even restrooms outside the classroom. There's signs in the main temple complex that'll take you around to the main bathrooms for the entire temple. So you're welcome to come and go as you please. We even have water here that is provided by our students that you're welcome to help yourself to. And last night we had a temple game fun night where students came and we had a bunch of fun playing games and stuff like this. And they brought a bunch of food and snacks, and some of that stuff is still here. So if you'd like to have some snacks, help yourself to any of that stuff that's over there as well. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the teachings of the Buddha are to help you move to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. The causes and conditions that are producing those discontent feelings have been uprooted and eliminated out of the mind. The mind's been purified through the tools and the techniques and the training that the Buddha shares. He teaches you how to actually accomplish this. So the teachings of the Buddha, it's not about a bunch of beliefs or rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. It's about you accumulating wisdom about the natural world around you and learning how to train your own mind to uproot certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered so you can experience this peace and joy. You'll notice that the mind becomes focused, concentrated, have clarity of mind, deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will really blossom because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships any longer. And you're not even in a bad mood anymore. You never experience a bad mood by the time you get to enlightenment, that all that stuff has been eliminated. So part of the training to get to enlightenment is to do meditation, and that's why we start our classes with meditation. But there's also a whole host of teachings that you need to learn and grow and develop and understand. And we have various courses and classes and retreats that'll help you to be able to accomplish this. Each Sunday and Wednesday, we have what's called the group learning program, where this book series that I share, which is 13 books, we go through the first book chapter by chapter every Sunday. And then on Wednesdays, we do meditation and open up to any questions that you guys have. So that's a 7-month program that'll gradually walk you through, helping you to develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. And you can attend here or you can attend online. And if you can't attend live, either at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. on Sunday and Wednesday, everything's recorded so you can watch it on Facebook or YouTube or on our podcast or anything like that. And then we also have this particular program, which is the Pali Canon and English Study Group, which meets each Saturday. And what this program does is it goes through volumes 2 through 13. Over a 1.5 year period, we study all the various teachings using the original words of the Buddha in a more traditional, in a more like a study group. It's not a traditional style of learning where typically a teacher is teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions, teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions. But here we kind of do this more like a study group. And then we have various classes and courses and retreats. Like this afternoon at 1 o'clock, I'm going to be teaching a 3-hour course where it's called Introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha, where it's very good for someone who's just starting out and has no idea what the teachings of the Buddha even are. I'm going to be starting that today at 1 o'clock, so you're welcome to come for that. And we start that with meditation, and then I share teachings with you that are going to help you get started to start to understand the teachings of the Buddha. And then tomorrow we have the group learning program, which we're in chapter 7, which is the 5 precepts, a householder's guide to daily practice. I'm going to be teaching you through the words of the Buddha, helping you to understand these 5 impactful decisions that if you make them wisely, it will produce wholesome results in your life. But if you make them unwisely, it's going to produce unwholesome results. And then this Monday, I'm going to be starting a 5-day course, which is called Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment. This is where you learn all the foundational teachings. We start at 9 o'clock on Monday. We go up until lunch, and then we have an 1.5 hour lunch break. And then we come back for about 1.5 hours or so, and we finish up at 3 o'clock each day. So all of these classes, courses, and retreats are available at no cost. Even the books and the videos, the podcasts, the audiobooks, everything's available to you at no cost. You can download the books for free from our website. You can take them and go print them if you like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order them on Amazon. You can even get personal guidance and personal help if you would like to sit down and talk about certain challenges that you're having, because it's one thing to learn in class and kind of a teaching where I'm sharing teachings with everybody, but it's a whole nother thing to work through a certain particular challenge that you're having and working with a teacher to understand how to apply these teachings in that specific situation. So whether you're here in Chiang Mai or whether you're online, you can meet with me privately, either here in Chiang Mai, or I have the ability for students to meet with me in Zoom one-on-one. So as you travel, you can go to our website and schedule appointments, and then you'll be able to meet with me one-on-one, and I'll be able to help you with any kind of challenges that you're having. So today's class, which is the which is the Pali Canon and English Study Group, we study the words of the Buddha, and we read each one of these chapters in class. And these chapters are pretty short. You can see here that these are the original words of the Buddha from his lifetime. And then after we read this, then I will share some teachings for about 5 minutes, and then I open up to any and all questions that you have. What you have in this book's volumes 2 through 13 is you have the original words of the Buddha. You have a reference back to the original source, which the Buddha's teachings are assembled into 45 large books, which are about this thick. It's called the Pali Canon. These are the original teachings of the Buddha. And this reference will take you back so that you can see exactly where this came from. And then you've got reflections from me to be able to help you understand how to integrate the teachings into your life and other various things that you might need, that you have those details in there as well. So what we do in this program is I invite people here at the temple and those of you guys in Zoom that you can volunteer to read this particular chapter so that we can all kind of study it. And we read it, somebody will read it, then I will share some teachings on that and open up to any questions that you guys have. If you guys would like to volunteer to read this, or even if you have questions when we get to the question period, we have microphones here in this white bowl. If you could use that, that'd be wonderful, because then we'd be able to hear you here at the temple, and then they'll be able to hear you online too. They wouldn't be able to hear you online if you were talking without a microphone. So you can just get a microphone and press the gray button on it. The lights will come on. You can just hold it up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple and online as well. And then you can just keep the microphone with you, because you might have questions or someone around you might have questions. You can just share the microphones around. And then if those of you guys are online would like to volunteer to read in Zoom, you can just electronically raise your hand and I'll be able to see that. And then you can open up your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple and be able to hear you online as well through the live stream. And then when we get to the question period, those of you guys in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions through the comments section, and I'll be able to see that, and I'll be able to answer your question. And then those of you guys in Zoom, you can also ask questions by electronically raising your hand as well and opening up your microphone. So is there someone who would like to volunteer to read this particular chapter? Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Leo. Sometimes the batteries run out in these microphones, so you might have to cycle through one or two before you find one with batteries. We have rechargeable batteries that can be swapped out.
Okay, the 8th state.
We lost it. Yep, it was working for a second. Batteries are out in that one. I haven't seen anybody switch them around for a little while.
Monks, there are these 8 stains, pollutions. What 8? First, non-recitation is the stain of chanting. 2. Lack of upkeep is the stain of houses. 3. Laziness is the stain of beauty. 4. Heedlessness is the stain of God. 5. Misconduct is the stain of a woman, a person. 6. Selfishness is the stain of a donor. 7. Evil, unwholesome qualities are stains in this world and the next. 8. Ignorance, unknowing of true reality, is a stain more significant than these. The very worst of stains. These monks are the 8 stains.
Okay, thank you, Leo. So the Buddha discovered what we refer to as the 10 fetters in the mind. These are also referred to as pollutions or taints. This is what you're working to learn and understand as part of the journey to enlightenment, and you're uprooting those out of the mind through the tools and techniques that the Buddha taught. These are called the 10 fetters because during ancient times, they would keep prisoners trapped with a fetter. What a fetter is it's a shackle around your ankle with a chain and a ball. And this is how prisoners would stay trapped in a particular area. Today, we put prisoners in a jail cell. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would refer to this as a fetter. So once you were convicted of a crime, you would have a fetter attached to your ankle and you would be confined to a certain area. So that's what you learn as part of the core central teachings of the Buddha. But then here the Buddha is describing these stains, this problematic thing that's in the mind that hinders you from being able to experience enlightenment. Here, this first one where he says non-recitation is the stain of chanting. During the lifetime of the Buddha, you had to chant in order to get to enlightenment. If you didn't chant, you had no way of committing the teachings to memory because it would just be a teacher teaching and then you would just be sitting there listening. So like everything I've said so far up until now, his students would remember that and then they would chant it word for word for word. I doubt you guys could probably chant what I said word for word because we don't kind of do that kind of thing nowadays because we have books and you can learn the meaning and the understanding of the teachings and you can absorb that and retain that. You can retain the meaning and the understanding. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, you had to chant in order to get to enlightenment, in order to commit the teachings to memory. But remember, chanting isn't mystical or magical. It's not a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship or anything like this. It was just to commit the teachings to memory. So, of course, Course, the Buddha would say, like, hey, if you're not willing to chant and you're not willing to put forth the effort to commit the teachings to memory, this is a stain. This is going to hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment. So that's why this one is the first one. And then lack of upkeep is a stain of houses. If you've ever had a situation where, like, your room or your house or your apartment or condo, where it's very messy and cluttered, when you probably come home, your mind is probably overactive and maybe disgruntled. It's really hard to kind of be calm and relaxed and peaceful in an environment where it's cluttered with a bunch of stuff. So one of the things the Buddha used to teach is kind of keep your house neat and orderly so that when you come back to this place, you can feel at ease and you can feel comfortable. Whereas if you didn't take care of the dwelling where you live and the place where you reside, you would come back, things would be really cluttered, and your mind would have difficulties gaining its peacefulness and joy and being stable and calm. So he taught to keep your house or keep your dwelling well kept. Then laziness, he says, is a stain of beauty. What he's referring to here is like a lack of diligence and determination and dedication. That in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to have inner discipline. That consistently over a long-term period, you're going to need to gradually learn the teachings. You're going to need to gradually train your mind, and you're going to need to gradually practice these teachings in order to produce the progress in the mind. Whereas if you were lazy, it's not going to be able to lead to your enlightenment. So enlightenment, while we call it enlightenment, it's not like a light switch that now it's off and then you flip it on and it's instantly on. It's a gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So over multiple years, you're going to need to gradually learn the teachings and gradually implement them into your life. And slowly but surely, this wears away the pollutions of the mind, and the qualities of the enlightened mind start to gradually increase, and then the discontentedness gradually decreases because you're decreasing the pollutions. So you're going to need to have dedication and diligence and motivation and ambition and enthusiasm. And if you didn't have that, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. So that's why the Buddha is referring to this as laziness of beauty, right? If you've ever been lazy or kind of dull or lethargic, maybe your face kind of looked disgruntled if you looked in the mirror, right? So that's why he's calling it, this stain of beauty. Heedlessness is a stain of a guard. What heedlessness is inattentiveness, unalertness, uncalmness. And you may have been at different times in your life indulging in substances that cause heedlessness, like alcohol or drugs or something like this. There are certain substances that we can ingest that produces heedlessness in the mind, unattentiveness, unalertness. But you can also be heedless even without those substances too. If you just go through life and not really pay attention to what's going on in your life and making wise decisions, your mind is unattentive and unalert to what's going on in your life, being conscious about the decisions that you're making, then the mind is heedless. So moving to this enlightened mental state is to move to a higher consciousness where you're thinking about the things that are going on in your life and you're making wise decisions consciously. So if you were heedless, meaning unattentive and unalert, the Buddha is saying this is a stain of a guard, because he talks about mindfulness as guarding the mind, because you have certain invasive thoughts that come into your mind. Maybe when you're dozing off to sleep at night, or you're waking up in the morning, or maybe you're sitting at a traffic light waiting for the traffic light to change, and you have certain intrusive thoughts that are coming into your mind. So if you were heedless, meaning unaware of what's going on, you're not guarding your mind. The Buddha teaches you to guard the mind with mindfulness and awareness of mind, that whenever you see an unwholesome thought come into your mind, that you cut it off and let it go. So that's why during the meditation, we're training the mind to focus on the breath. And then when the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. So that now with that ability that you've cultivated in meditation in daily life, when you're walking about, when you're driving down the street, when you're sitting in a business meeting or what have you, and some unwholesome thought comes in, you can cut that off and let it go. But if you weren't training your mind in meditation, you wouldn't be able to do that in daily life. So the Buddha is describing that this unawareness, unmindfulness is a stain of a guard, meaning you're not guarding your mind. When the Buddha talks about complacency and like laziness in his teachings, Of course, like if you chose not to meditate, or you weren't reading, or you weren't coming to the temple, this is complacency, that you're not dedicated and diligent to learn and grow and develop your practice. So you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment in that way, because the mind is complacent in its activities, that you're not applying effort and energy towards growing and developing and doing this inner work to improve the condition of your mind and the condition of your life. This, of course, is complacency, that someone's not meditating, they're not reading, they're not talking with a teacher, they're not coming to the temple, things like this. But when the Buddha talks about complacency in detail, he talks about complacency all the way to the level that if you have an unwholesome thought that comes into your mind and you do nothing about it, he says you're complacent, because you're allowing that unwholesome thought to come into your mind. Because if you can think about the mind dwelling in these unwholesome thoughts, if you just allow the mind to keep dwelling in those thoughts, your mind's going to stay wired that way, where it keeps having these unwholesome thoughts. But if an unwholesome thought comes into the mind and you take action and you cut it off and let it go, slowly but surely over time, those unwholesome thoughts won't be there. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have unwholesome thoughts. The mind's been purified of all the causes and conditions that are producing it. But you wouldn't be able to eliminate these unwholesome thoughts if you just allowed the mind to dwell in those unwholesome thoughts. So whether you're sitting at a traffic light, whether you're at a family event, whether you're in a business meeting or anything like this, if you have an unwholesome thought that comes into your mind, you can take action. You can cut it off and let it go. And that would be the exact opposite of heedlessness. You're being heedful, meaning you have mindfulness, you have awareness of mind. And when you're observant and notice those unwholesome thoughts coming in, you can cut them off and let them go. And this meditation that I just did with you guys is what's going to help you to be able to cultivate that quality and that ability. And this is a very important thing that's going to help you to transform your mind, is practicing mindfulness or heedfulness, so that your mind has this guard where you're able to guard the mind. It's almost like a virus scanner on the computer. Your virus scanner on the computer, it kind of sits in the background and it just kind of sits there, and you don't even know that it's running necessarily. It's just sitting there on your computer. And if a virus comes in and lands on your hard drive or in your memory, it jumps in and takes action, and then it eradicates that virus. Boom, it gets rid of it, right? So your mindfulness is like that. It's just kind of there on autopilot. You're practicing mindfulness all the time. And at any point that you see an unwholesome thought come into the mind, boom, you take action and you eradicate it and get it out of the mind. And then it just kind of goes in the background again. Your mindfulness is just always there. So that's what the Buddha is describing here as a guard. Here he says, misconduct is a stain of a woman or a person. What he's talking about here is the moral conduct, that depending on how you function in the world, you probably don't have 100% wisdom of the natural law of karma. There's certain things that you're doing in terms of your intentions, your speech, your actions, maybe your livelihood, where you're causing harm to other people. You may not realize you're causing harm to other people, but you are, in the way that you speak, in the way that you have actions, because your mind isn't fully awake to these natural laws. So if you haven't studied the central teachings of the Buddha, where he's teaching you about moral conduct, there are certain things that you might be doing, like maybe you speak harsh to your mom or your dad or your brothers and your sisters or your neighbor or your coworkers. Maybe sometimes you're a bit bitter. Maybe you argue with people sometimes. You might think that other people are causing you to do this, but it's not. It's your own mind that's causing you to do this. That because your mind has certain pollutions, you're in the world talking with people in ways that is maybe unfriendly, or maybe disrespectful, or maybe unkind and impolite. So you can purify your mind of this, and you can improve your moral conduct. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't have the wisdom to understand how to do that. So that's what the teachings of the Buddha are providing you, is the wisdom to understand how to train your mind and how to conduct yourself through your moral conduct in a way that doesn't cause harm to others. Because any harm that you cause to others, this harm is just going to come back to you. So when you're bitter, harsh, and hostile in your conversations, in your relationships, look at those relationships. Those people are bitter, harsh, and hostile to you too. Because whatever you're putting out, it's just coming back to you. So if you continue to lack wisdom and you continue to put out bitterness and harshness through your moral conduct, then this is all just going to keep coming back to you. So you can transform and you can change what you experience in life by making different decisions. So that's why the Buddha is saying misconduct, the way that you conduct yourself, if you haven't learned and purified your moral conduct, you're going to experience this continuous harm coming back to you, because this is the harm that you're putting out into the world. Selfishness is the stain of a donor. This is the whole reason why this is actually in this book. We're actually in volume 13 right now. We're almost done with the group, with the Pali Canon and English study group, and we're going to be starting over from the beginning. But here the Buddha is saying this selfishness is a stain of a donor. When the mind is selfish, when you're unwilling to give and share with others, whether it's your food or your money or your clothes or your jewelry or maybe your house or different things like this, if you're unwilling to share with others, your mind is holding on to things selfishly. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is let go. He's teaching you to be able to give and share with others, because it helps your mind to let go. When you hold on to things very tightly, your mind's going to be discontent. If you hold on to your phone, for example, your mobile phone, and it's like my phone, my phone, my phone. Well, this phone is impermanent. It's not permanent. Someday it's going to break. Someday someone's going to steal it. Maybe you misplace it. Maybe it just stops working because it's old. Maybe you drop it and the screen breaks or something like this. So if you held on to this really tightly, wanting it to be permanent, when any of those things happen, you're going to be sad. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be irritated or annoyed. So the Buddha teaches you to give and share. Share with other people. So you can share your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, all of that stuff without any expectation of anything in return. If you have an expectation of something in return, you're not yet practicing pure generosity. So say you went towards a store and you were opening the door for somebody and letting somebody in the store. If you're standing there expecting them to say thank you, and they walk in and they don't say thank you, you'll be irritated. You'll be annoyed because you have an expectation, and that expectation isn't going to be fulfilled permanently. Some people walk through the door, they'll say thank you. There's other people who walk through and they're involved in their conversation, or they're not thinking, or they just chose not to say thank you, right? So if you're standing there with an expectation of, I'm holding this door because I expect a thank you, you're setting yourself up for discontentedness. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get annoyed because not everybody is going to say thank you. So if you practice generosity, it's important to do it without any expectation of anything in return. And this is eliminating your selfishness or your craving and your expectations, wanting things to be a certain way. You're just giving and sharing to enhance the quality of your mind, understanding that getting rid of craving, desire, attachment is helpful for your own mind. Evil, unwholesome qualities are a stain in this world and the next. What the Buddha is talking about is unwholesome qualities in the mind, that it's a stain in this life, because these unwholesome qualities in your mind, it's producing unwholesome results in your life. And he's saying it affects you in this world, meaning in your current existence, and any future existence. The Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth, which can be independently verified that this is actually true. So if you don't get to enlightenment in this life, there is going to be rebirth, and you've been involved in countless rebirths up to this point. The Buddha doesn't use rebirth as a way to guilt you or shame you or fear you into learning his teachings. He already got to the peace and joy that he's not trying to convince you or force you to do anything at all. He's just explaining to you what it took for him to get to enlightenment. So he teaches the cycle of rebirth because he's explaining to you the way the world is and helping you understand how the world is. And if you started having memories of your past lives, for example, and you didn't realize that this is true reality, that there is the cycle of rebirth, you might think you're going crazy. So the Buddha teaches the cycle of rebirth for that reason and other reasons as well. But here he's just referring to these unwholesome qualities in your mind. They're going to plague you in this life, and if you're reborn, in the next life too. And then this last one, which is the stain of all stains, he talks about this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. This is the way that we're translating it into English, is using this word ignorance. I tend to use the unknowing of true reality because I think this fits much better. A Buddha, an enlightened being, doesn't talk in degrading and disparaging ways to people. They don't talk down to people. So today, if you were to call somebody ignorant, this is like a derogatory, degrading, and diminishing way to talk to somebody. So while people are translating what the Buddha taught over to this word ignorance, this unknowing of true reality is a much better way to understand this. The other way that you might translate this is confusion or misunderstanding or misperception. What this is that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand in the unenlightened state. For example, in the unenlightened state, the mind just doesn't understand that it's causing its own discontentedness. You will firmly believe that other people are causing you to be angry. You might think your brother is frustrating you. You might think your coworkers are irritating you, or that sound is annoying me. But in reality, it's your own mind that is causing this. In this class I'm going to be teaching this afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m., I'm going to teach you the very first teaching of the Buddha, along with other things, that is going to help you to be able to see that your mind is causing your own discontentedness. And you can independently verify it. You can have a breakthrough where you can see with wisdom that your mind is causing its own anger, its own sadness, its own frustration, the guilt, the shame, the fear. All these feelings are being caused by your own mind. And this is the reason why you can eliminate these feelings. This is the reason why you can get to enlightenment, because your mind is causing it. But as long as you falsely believe that other people are causing you to be angry, you're not going to be able to solve the problem. And this would be ignorance, or this would be unknowing of true reality. And that's why the Buddha says this is the stain of all stains, essentially, the worst of the stains, because it keeps you trapped in the unenlightened state. As long as you don't understand what's causing your discontent feelings and you keep blaming it on other people, you'll just continue to be angry and frustrated your whole life, because you'll push people away out of your life thinking that that's going to solve the problem. When you experience frustration or any kind of painful feeling, you might push this person or the situation out of your life thinking that that solved the problem. But it didn't solve the problem, because it's only a matter of time before you get angry or irritated again. If that solved the problem, when you pushed people away, you'd be peaceful. You'd be joyful from that point forward. But you're not, because you keep getting angry and irritated over and over again. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people based on your unknowing of true reality, or your confusion, your misunderstanding. You might be bitter, harsh, and hostile towards them. And this doesn't solve the problem either, because it just keeps coming back to you. Or you might put your expectations on people, trying to control them and force them to do things your way. And again, this doesn't work either, because there's 8 billion people in the world, and you can't control 8 billion people. You can't control them to do things your own way. You can't even control one person, right? You can't even control your children or your husband or your wife or your partner or your employees or your neighbors. You can't control what people do. You can't even control your own mind. This is why it's getting angry and sad and frustrated. But through training your mind, arising wisdom, which is the opposite of ignorance, arising wisdom, you can control your own mind. You can get to the point where you can control it 100%, and it never gets angry, and it never gets frustrated, it never gets agitated or feeling guilty or shameful or lonely or bored or any of these other feelings that you don't like. So this ignorance is the stain of all stains. It's the most significant stain, because as long as your mind lacks wisdom, you'll continue to blame other people. You'll continue to struggle. You won't have the tools and techniques that you need in order to eradicate the pollutions of the mind and get to the point where your mind's peaceful and joyful. So that's why the Buddha describes it as the stain of all stains, the most significant one. So any questions here that you guys have, either at the temple or online, just let me know. Yes, ma'am. If you could get a microphone here. You just have to press the gray button and then the lights come on. So any of the ones in the bowl should work. There you go.
Oh, here we go. I'm curious what constitutes an unwholesome thought or quality. Who's there to judge, and how do we apply compassion to kind of determining and discerning and like dealing with anything we call unwholesome?
Sure. So in the teachings of the Buddha, there is no judgment where you're judging other people. And what judgment is where you're putting yourself above others and you're looking down on people. And this would be to judge somebody else of what is wholesome and unwholesome for their life. But what you do on this path is it's all about your journey. It's about your journey to enlightenment. It's not about judging others or comparing other people. But what you learn about the path to enlightenment is anything that is harmful to others or harmful to yourself, this is unwholesome because it's producing harm in the world. And any kind of harm that you're causing, it's just going to come back to you. So an unwholesome thought would be like, say you're in a relationship and you choose to go outside the relationship for sexual contact. This would be an unwholesome thought because now you're causing harm to yourself and to others. And now this harm can come back to you. This is why we get sexually transmitted diseases, because of our interest in go around and having sex with other people. This is why people get injured. Sometimes there's fights, or people have even been murdered over this kind of thing. This is the unwholesome results coming back to us. This is referred to as gamma, as cause and effect, or action and result. Some people refer to it as karma. There's no being that's overseeing this. There's not punishments or rewards. It's the results of our decisions. That every decision you make, either wisely or unwisely, is going to produce some result. And when we make wise decisions, it produces wholesome results. And when we make unwise decisions, it produces unwholesome results. So wholesomeness is harmlessness, where you're not causing harm. Unwholesomeness is going to be harmful. So anytime you're causing harm, and you learn through the teachings of the Buddha, what are harmful decisions that you could be making? And the Buddha doesn't teach this as rules or commandments or anything like this. He just helps you to be able to see the truth for yourself. Like, for example, if we lie, this is harmful, right? Because if you're lying to other people, even lying to yourself, this is usually based in what we refer to as craving, desire, attachment. There's something the mind's longing for. It's yearning, it's wanting. And if you tell the truth, you're not going to get it. But if you lie, you think you're going to get what you want, right? But when you lie, people discover those lies. And now people find you as being undependable and unreliable. And then also, if you do a lot of lying, your mind has to constantly figure out, what did I tell one person versus what did I tell another person? And you have to keep this all straight. So this is an unwholesome quality of mind that you're choosing to lie, for example. Where these come from is what we refer to as the 3 unwholesome roots. This is like a high-level description of everything that's unwholesome. That there's craving, which is longing and yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection. There's anger, which is like the bitterness, the hostility, the aggression. And then there's ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality. These are called the 3 unwholesome roots. So anything unwholesome in your life, it's going to come back to these 3 things. That any thought that goes through your mind, if it's an unwholesome thought, it's going to either be based in your own selfish desires, which is craving, desire, attachment. It's either going to be based in your anger, your bitterness, and your hostility, or it's going to be based in this ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality, this confusion, this misunderstanding. So these are the 3 unwholesome roots. And you can independently verify through your own direct experience how anytime you experience anything unwholesome in your life, it came from a decision that you made based in either craving, anger, and ignorance, or all 3 of them. Oftentimes what we do is we blame the unwholesome things that you experience in life on other people. You might think it's other people that are causing these unwholesome things in your life. Or you might base it in luck, good luck or bad luck. Or you might say it's your destiny or your fate. This is actually untrue. That you can see more and more clearly when you learn, and I haven't really explained it all to you. That's what these other classes and courses are for. But when you learn and you independently verify, you can see anything unwholesome, whether it's a thought or any particular thing that you experience in life, it's coming from craving, anger, and ignorance from your own mind. And that's why the Buddha is teaching you how to bring those down, so that as you bring those down through the tools and techniques, purifying your mind, then you arise the wholesome qualities of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And as you arise these wholesome qualities of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, which are the exact opposites of the unwholesome qualities, now when you make decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, it's going to produce wholesome results in your life. And as you're gradually bringing down the unwholesome qualities, gradually bringing up the wholesome qualities, your mind is transforming as well as your life, that you'll see your relationships blossom, the concentration and focus in your mind. You'll see the discontentedness diminish because you're now finally addressing the real problem. Where when you're out in the world with a lack of wisdom and you don't know how to train your mind, you'll continue to have the same problems over and over. So if you're noticing that the same particular things are happening to you over and over and over and over and over again, this is because you haven't cultivated the wisdom of how to make different decisions. So if you're experiencing like broken relationships over and over and over and over and over again, this is because you haven't gained the wisdom that you need in order to form and sustain healthy relationships. You might get to the end of a relationship, feel painful feelings, and blame that on other people. Or you might think that it's your love that's causing these painful feelings, but it's not your love that's causing these painful feelings. It's these pollutions that are in your mind. And when you eradicate the craving, anger, and ignorance, you can get to a point where all your relationships are peaceful and at ease. Right now, you probably can't imagine having a situation where every relationship you have is at ease, where you get along with your mom and dad, where you get along with your brothers and sisters, where you don't have arguments with your neighbors or your coworkers. You probably can't imagine that because you've never lived life in that way. But that is this better way of life that the Buddha is teaching you, is how to purify your mind, and you can get to the point where all your relationships are at ease. But as long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to others, people are going to be that way with you. So purifying your mind and getting to the point where you've eliminated these unwholesome qualities of mind, you'll be able to experience different results in your life. But with a lack of wisdom, you won't be able to experience those different results because you just lack the ability to understand through these natural laws of how to conduct yourself in a way that would be wise, as the Buddha describes. Mm-hmm. No other questions? Okay. You have a question, Rex? Yeah.
With these 8 stains, I see the pairing.
Mm-hmm.
Non-recitation detracts from chanting, lack of upkeep detracts from houses, misconduct detracts from women. The one I really have a difficulty with is number 3. Laziness is a stain of beauty. Mm-hmm. I would think that, lack of humility or something else, but laziness just kind of doesn't fit like the others do.
Yeah, so what he's referring to here is like dullness, lethargic condition. If you've ever experienced for an extended period of time, if you look in the mirror, you're going to look pretty disgruntled, lacking beauty, right? That's what he's essentially saying, that if you're lazy, it's going to produce a lack of beautiness, that you're not going to be able to experience this brightness and this radiance. Like if you've ever been active and enthused and motivated and going out in the world and doing things actively, you'll see that you're smiling, you're cheerful because you're enjoying going out into the world. But when you're dull and lethargic and complacent and lazy, you're going to see that your face looks very disgruntled, or the stain of beauty, that it's going to hinder you from experiencing this beauty, this brightness, where your eyes are bright, you're cheerful, you're smiling, these kinds of things. Okay, let's see if we have any questions. Oh, we have a question online too. Let's see. It's on Zoom, so I have to look with my eyes very close. Let's see. This is from Rachel. Hi, David. I have a question on number 5. Why did the Buddha emphasize woman here? So oftentimes the Buddha was teaching different people at different times. So this particular discourse, he could have very easily been talking to a woman. So he cast it in that regard. And that's why when I publish this, I put in parentheses a person, because it's not just a woman, it's everybody. Misconduct is a stain of anybody, any being. It's not just a woman, but he was most likely speaking to a woman here, so that's why he probably used the pronoun woman. And you'll see that from time to time. This particular discourse doesn't have it, but sometimes at the beginning, the whole reason why the Buddha would have taught something like this is a student would have asked him a question. They would have said, what are the stains that we experience in order that hinder us from enlightenment, for example? And then the Buddha would have said, monks, there are these 8 stains, right? So he's talking to monks here. So there might have been women in the community that he was talking to. It's hard to say unless prior to this, you can see the person. Sometimes you can see the name of the person, the gender, and the actual question that they're asking. But this is everybody. It's not just a woman that this misconduct would be a stain of. Okay, let's see if we have any questions anywhere else. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So let's move to the next one. Here you can see all the different information that's provided in the books for you guys to learn. We can study this one. Let's see what time it is. Yeah, this is chapter 22. Would somebody like to read this one? Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Qualities that bring one to hell or heaven. Monks possessing 3 qualities and without having abandoned 3 stains, pollutions, one is deposited in hell as if brought there. What 3? 1 is immoral, unwholesome, and has not abandoned the stain of immorality, unwholesomeness. 2, one is jealous and has not abandoned the stain of jealousy. 3, one is selfish and has not abandoned the stain of selfishness. Possessing these qualities, and without having abandoned these 3 stains, one is deposited in hell as if brought here. Monks, possessing these 3 qualities and having abandoned these 3 stains, one is deposited in heaven as if brought there. What 3? 1 is virtuous, practicing moral conduct, and has abandoned the stain of immorality, unwholesomeness. 2, one is not jealous and has abandoned the stain of jealousy. 3, one is not selfish and has abandoned the stain of selfishness. Possessing these 3 qualities and having abandoned these 3 stains, one is deposited in heaven as if brought there.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So the Buddha did teach 5 realms of existence, and these can actually be independently verified. You may not be able to do that right now based on your wisdom, but he did teach the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, which some people might refer to as ghost, the human realm, which you're very familiar with, and then the heavenly realm. And all of these 5 realms can be independently verified. And he taught this for a reason, because at different times you might actually have communication with these beings. These beings can communicate with human beings. And if you didn't understand that these different realms existed, you could be really shaken up because you don't understand true reality of the way the world is. Or some people can actually see these beings because they're formless. The hell beings, the afflicted spirits, and the heavenly beings, they're formless beings. They don't have physical form, but there's some human beings that can actually see these beings. And if you didn't have that wisdom to understand that they existed, your mind could be very easily shaken up. So he taught these 5 realms because it's true reality. It's what's actually being experienced in the world. And then he taught that, okay, once you die in a particular life, you will be reborn into one of these 5 realms if you haven't gotten to enlightenment, and you're going to be constantly reborn over and over until you get to enlightenment and escape this. And again, this can be independently verified too. If you observe your past lives, you'll know that this is actually true. The ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha is to get to enlightenment, where you've trained your mind and you've seen that occurring in this life. The teachings of the Buddha aren't about a bunch of beliefs and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's about learning now, reflecting on the teachings now to independently verify them, and practicing now. And that's why you experience the results now in this life. You will experience the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life, and you can see that occurring as you're gradually learning. But should you not get to enlightenment for any reason, there's going to be rebirth, and there's going to be in one of the 5 realms, either hell, animal, afflicted spirit, human realm, or heavenly realm. And you've been experiencing this constant rebirth for many years, countless existences. So the goal isn't to be reborn in heaven. And even if you were, that's not a permanent existence. You will be needing to be reborn over and over and over again in order to ultimately escape the cycle of rebirth. And the same thing about hell. If a being is reborn into hell, it's not a permanent existence. That being is going to eventually make their way out of hell. So he never used heaven and hell as a way of like incentivizing you to learn his teachings or to fear you or guilt you into learning his teachings. He's just explaining to you, hey, this is the way it truly is, because he was able to understand this. And there's people today that can understand this and have independently verified this. So here he's explaining to you these natural laws of cause and effect or action and result. What is it that leads to rebirth in hell? And he has other discourses where he talks about it in more detail. Here, he's just talking about three aspects. He's saying, okay, immorality or unwholesomeness. If you have this in your mind, this leads to rebirth in the hell realm. And then jealousy, if the mind has jealousy. The jealousy is there because your mind's holding on to something, like say a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're holding on to this and you don't want other people to talk to them. You don't want other people to be around them. You don't want them to go out with other people. You're holding on to this person very tightly, and there's this jealousy that comes up. This is a stain. And the Buddha says, okay, this is what leads to rebirth in the hell realm. And then the selfishness. This is where the mind's holding on, and it's not willing to practice generosity, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. So these aren't the only three things that lead to rebirth in the hell realm, but these are three. And when you look at the totality of the teachings of the Buddha, you will see other aspects of his teachings where he goes into various details about this. Okay, so he's just showing you the cause and effect. There's a certain action, there's a certain result, there's a certain cause, there's a certain effect. He's not guilting, shaming, or fearing you into anything because his mind's already peaceful. He's not trying to force you to do anything. It's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results, whatever you experience. But if somebody's interested to know what leads to rebirth in hell, he explains this throughout his various teachings. And if you're interested in that in a lot more detail, volume 11, which is titled The Realms of Existence, has that in a lot more detail. And then he gives these details about what leads to rebirth in heaven. And again, this isn't the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to arise wisdom, purify your mind, train the mind, get to enlightenment, and escape the whole cycle of rebirth. But if somebody was interested in, hey, what leads to rebirth in heaven? Okay, here it is. He's explaining. And it's just the opposites of the ones previously. And again, there's a lot more details here that the Buddha gives in other discourses. These aren't the only three things that lead to rebirth in the heavenly realm, but there's other details in other discourses where he gives a lot more elaborate details. I don't suggest that you should be encouraged to be reborn in heaven. That's not the ultimate goal. Being in the human realm is the ideal existence because you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. So you tend to have built-in motivation to get to enlightenment because you don't like feeling sad. You don't like loneliness and boredom. You don't like guilt and shame and fear and all these other painful feelings. So you have built-in motivation to be able to apply effort and energy towards learning and growing and developing and getting to enlightenment. In the heavenly realm, they don't have those feelings. Those beings only experience exclusively pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. They don't experience the painful feelings there. So they tend to be complacent. They tend to be lazy in terms of learning and growing and developing and getting to enlightenment. So it's only in this human realm that you have this built-in motivation and the ability to get to enlightenment. The heavenly beings have the ability to get to enlightenment, but because they don't have that built-in motivation, they're oftentimes complacent. In the other realms like hell, the animal realm, and the afflicted spirits, they actually can't get to enlightenment in those existences. They need to be reborn into human realm or the heavenly realm to be able to get to enlightenment. So this, in my opinion, is the ideal existence. And while you might feel kind of miserable sometimes in your life, you can escape that. You can get to the point where you're a human being and your mind's completely peaceful and completely joyful. But here the Buddha is explaining what leads to hell and what leads to heaven. And again, I don't encourage anybody to set their goal to be reborn in heaven because you're still in the cycle of rebirth and it's not a permanent existence. Being in the heavenly realm, you can very easily be reborn down into other realms like hell, animal, afflicted spirits, or back into the human realm or back into the heavenly realm. So the goal would be to escape this constant cycle of being reborn over and over and over again. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, yes, ma'am. We have some microphones. Rex has one. They can share you.
Thank you. Your talk is very inspiring. I actually have a question in terms of point 3. I'm very curious about selfishness. I don't know. For our, I think for us, we actually born in 19th in China. I don't know whether it's caused by the one-child policy. Our generation always been labeled as selfish. So I don't know. In my relationship, for example, I always feel sometimes also argue each other. Like I think you're selfish, and it just like you didn't put yourself in my shoes. But sometimes I just think I don't know what is selfishness. Yeah, and how to cope with it if you think someone is selfish and it really brings the burden to you. Yeah, I just...
Sure.
Thank you.
So selfishness is the lack of willingness to give and share more than is strictly required in any given situation, such as your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. So an individual is unwilling to share. It's the opposite of generosity. Generosity would be the willingness to share your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. So this is what you would like to practice because it's helping you to train your mind to eliminate the cause of discontent feelings, which is craving, desire, attachment. When your mind's holding on, this is what's causing your mind to be discontent. So when you get angry or sad or frustrated or any of these other discontent feelings, there's something your mind's holding on to where you're wanting it to be a certain way. And if you get things your way, you'll be happy. But when you don't get things your way, you feel angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. So breathing mindfulness meditation is training your mind to let go, but so is generosity. It's training your mind to let go. So you can be involved with people who are selfish, and maybe you even find it challenging to be generous at different times. But you can train your mind and you can transform it to not be selfish. If you're around people who are selfish, that's on them. It's affecting them. It's not affecting you. But when you have a craving for other people to be generous, you might feel discontent because, oh, this person's so selfish, and now you might be irritated or annoyed by that. But you don't have to be, because the only thing that's affecting you is your decisions. If you allow someone else's selfishness to cause your mind to be discontent, this isn't them causing you to be discontent. This is your own mind craving and longing and yearning and wanting this person to be a certain way. Because we're all on our own independent journey in this life, in multiple lives, and everybody needs the freedom to be able to make their own decisions to do whatever it is that they would like to do, right? But if you crave for others to be a certain way, or you have an expectation or a want of other people, now you'll be frustrated and irritated when you see that they're selfish. So if they're selfish, that's on them. They're choosing not to practice generosity, they're choosing not to give and share, then so be it. You know, that's on them, and it's only affecting them. The only time it's going to affect you is if you have a craving for them to be a certain way. But you can let that go and just understand that, okay, that's their life, that's what they're choosing to do. It's up to them to choose to be generous or not. And you don't need to form your feelings based on what other people are choosing to do. But that comes with training. You can hear me say this and intellectually like, yeah, why do I form my feelings based on what other people are doing? Because there's 8 billion people in the world. If you formed your feelings based on what other people did, you're going to be angry and frustrated when you see people doing things unwisely. So intellectually, someone can understand what I'm sharing to a certain degree, but then it's practicing it. Because your mind, even though you might intellectually understand, your mind wants to hold on. And it wants mom to be a certain way. It wants dad to be a certain way. It wants brothers and sisters and your life partner to be a certain way. And when they're not that way, you'll be frustrated and agitated. And your peace isn't going to come through changing them. You'll never get to peace trying to change other people. You need to get to peace by changing your own mind. And that's what the teachings of the Buddha focus you on, is how to change your own mind. So you being generous is what's important for your life and the condition of your mind. You're welcome. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other question. Oh, here we go. Junko, you have a question. Go ahead, ma'am. You just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much for a nice, good lecture. And then I wonder how Buddha figure out there is a 5 realm, and then also after we pass away or after it being finished, living in a certain realm, so they could rebirth. So this is my question.
Did you ask how did the Buddha figure out about the 5 realms?
Yeah. So we, yes.
Okay.
That's my.
I just was interested to be sure I heard you clearly. So there's beings today, and even the Buddha too, that can see your previous lives. Like you can see your own previous lives and your existence in those realms. So the Buddha was able to describe the hell realm in detail because at one time he had existences that were in hell. And the same thing with the animal realm, the afflicted spirit, of course, the human realm, and the heavenly realm, that he had existences in these realms. He could remember and recall that because while you have a certain mind in this human life, it retains residual memories from previous lives. It's kind of like you have a cardboard box A and a cardboard box B. These are 2 completely different cardboard boxes, and cardboard box A has certain contents in it. And when this cardboard box dissolves and is eliminated, the contents are still there and they're transferred into this new cardboard box. So this cardboard box, this mind that you have memories about your current life, but there's also memories in there from previous lives too that may become more and more apparent, particularly as you train your mind and you're eliminating more and more of the pollution of the mind. As you get more and more of the pollution out of the mind, you might see more of your previous lives. Some people have experienced something called deja vu. If you know what deja vu is, where you're kind of like experiencing something right now and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so familiar. I know I've done this before, but you know it wasn't in this particular life. These are residual memories from your previous life that are surfacing to the front of the mind. So these are like very simple, very, usually 5 seconds, 10 seconds here and there, but you can actually have more significant memories than that. Like you could have constant memories of drowning in a car accident. Like maybe your car went off of a bridge and you drowned in a car accident, and you just keep having constant memories of this. And of course, it wasn't something that happened in this life, but this is memories from your previous life. So the Buddha experienced the recall of his existences in his past lives in these various realms. And there's people that have experienced that today too, that can confirm for themselves that yes, the cycle of rebirth is 100% true. And there's multiple ways to confirm the cycle of rebirth. And one of the most significant ways is that if you have memories of your past lives, this will give you 100% clarity and confidence that the cycle of rebirth is true. But in reality, you don't actually need to know this 100%, that there's some people who will get to enlightenment and they will never recall their past lives. And that's okay, that you don't have to recall your past lives in order to be able to get to enlightenment. But as you're training your mind and you're uprooting the pollution, if you happen to start recalling your past lives and you didn't understand that that's what that was, you could feel like you're going insane. You could feel very troubled in having these constant memories of dying in a car accident, not realizing that this was in the past. So the Buddha teaches this for specific reasons. It'll help you to gain stability. But if you never have these memories, it's okay. You don't have to have the recall of your past lives in order to train your mind in this life to get to enlightenment.
Thank you so much. So Buddha actually recalled his previous life, so he had such experience. I haven't had. So that's why. So he realized that he knew. So the realms and then rebirth as well. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Really helpful to understand the Buddha's Buddha's teaching. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You can see in his other discourses where he talks about his previous lives in detail. And he talks about these different realms in detail as well. So he's recalling it and explaining it to people. Okay, so let's go to the next chapter, which is chapter 23. This one, actually, let me skip over this one because this one is kind of in verse form and it's kind of similar things. Let's actually study this one. This will be the last chapter that we study for today. Would somebody like to volunteer to read this, chapter 24? Yeah.
Five kinds of wealth. Monks, there are these 5 kinds of wealth. What 5? The wealth of confidence, the wealth of virtuous behavior, moral conduct, the wealth of learning, the wealth of generosity, and the wealth of wisdom. And what, monks, is the wealth of confidence? Here, a noble disciple is endowed with confidence. He places confidence in the enlightenment of the Tathagat. Thus, the perfectly enlightened one is an arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true wisdom and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed, teacher of heavenly beings and humans, the fortunate one, the perfectly enlightened one. This is called the wealth of confidence. And what is the wealth of virtuous behavior, moral conduct? Here, a noble disciple abstains from the destruction of life, abstains from taking what is not given, abstains from sexual misconduct, abstains from false speech, abstains from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness, the basis for heedlessness. This is called the wealth of virtuous behavior, moral conduct. And what is the wealth of learning? Here, a noble disciple has learned much, remembers what he has learned, and accumulates what he has learned. Those teachings that are good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, which proclaim the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life, such teachings as these he has learned much of, retained in the mind, recited verbally, mentally investigated, and penetrated well by view. This is called the wealth of learning. And what is the wealth of generosity? Here, a noble disciple dwells at home with a mind free of the stain of selfishness, freely generous, open-handed, joyful in letting go, devoted to charity, joyful in giving and sharing. This is called the wealth of generosity. And what is the wealth of wisdom? Here, a noble disciple is wise. He possesses the wisdom that discerns arising and passing away, which is noble and penetrative and leads to the complete destruction of discontentedness. This is called the wealth of wisdom. These monks are the 5 kinds of wealth. Should I also read the verse?
Sure.
When one has confidence in the Tathagat, unshakable and well established, and virtuous behavior that is wholesome, admired and praised by the noble ones. When he has confidence in the community and one's view has been straightened out, they say that one is not poor, that one's life is not lived in uselessness. Therefore, a wise person, remembering the Buddha's teaching, should be intent on confidence and virtuous behavior, confidence and vision of the teachings.
All right. Thank you, Siddharth. So one of the things that the Buddha did as he started teaching is he kind of flipped people's meaning and understanding of the world around them kind of upside down, in my opinion. Like, for example, he referred to his students as the noble ones. During the lifetime of the Buddha, it was rich, wealthy, and affluent people who were considered to be noble. And they would walk around with their right shoulder exposed. And when they would go out in society, people would know they're rich, wealthy, and affluent. Well, the Buddha said, hey, it's not a matter of whether you're rich or affluent that determines whether you're, a good person or not. It's about the wisdom in your moral conduct and the way that you interact in the world. So even if somebody was born into a impoverished family, when they would come to be a student with him, they would put on a robe and they would expose their right shoulder, and they would walk out into the community as a noble individual, as a noble disciple. Well, here's another example of where the Buddha is really flipping society upside down, where we tend to think about wealth in terms of monetary wealth or material possessions or land or real estate or something like this. The Buddha is saying, actually, what's really wealthy is determined if you're wealthy is these things. Do you have wealth of confidence, wealth of virtuous behavior, wealth of learning, wealth of generosity, and wealth of wisdom? That's what determines whether you're wealthy or not. And he actually describes people in other discourses that doesn't have these things as poor and impoverished. So if we think about it as we're only rich and wealthy if we have a bank account with a certain balance, then you'll just keep craving more and more and more money and wanting more and more money. But you can actually live a very basic lifestyle and be very wealthy. The Buddha was wealthy as a prince. He was destined to become the king. He had all kinds of royal riches, but he stepped out into the world, into homelessness, and he was still rich and he was still wealthy, but not material wealthy, because he didn't accept any kind of financial support. He would only accept food, clothing, shelter, medical care as part of his offerings that people would offer him. He didn't even accept gold or silver or land or animals or anything like this. It was only food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. But he was very wealthy because of these things. And he's encouraging students to accumulate this same kind of wealth, because this is what's going to lead to the improvement to the condition of your mind. So if you transform the way you think about wealth, then you can get to a point where you're not just constantly chasing money all the time and material wealth, but instead you're gradually working towards this kind of wealth, where this first wealth is the wealth of confidence. In order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to have confidence in the Buddha. And when you first come to the path, you may not have confidence in the Buddha, and that's understandable. You might doubt whether this person actually lived. You might doubt whether or not his teachings actually lead to enlightenment or not. So if you have doubt, it's normal. You can harness that and turn it into an inquisitive mind where you can investigate and examine his teachings. And the more that you see that they're true and they're improving the condition of your mind and the condition of your life, you'll gain more and more confidence. Because when you're transforming your mind to enlightenment, you're going to go through for certain struggles and certain difficulties. And this confidence in the Buddha can see you through that. Where if you have confidence that, hey, if he got to enlightenment and he went through these struggles and difficulties, I can do it too. And your confidence will help pull you through and be motivated and encouraged in your journey. This wealth of virtuous behavior is how you choose to conduct yourself in life. And here the Buddha is referring to the 5 precepts, which is what I'm going to teach tomorrow in the group learning program using the words of the Buddha, where he's talking about abstaining from the destruction of life, from stealing, from sexual misconduct, from false speech, which is lying, and substances that cause heedlessness. We're going to go into a lot of detail about this tomorrow, because if you are doing any of these things, it's going to produce calamity in your life. It's going to cause all kinds of difficulties in your life. So the Buddha is teaching you how to make wise decisions that are going to lead to wholesome results. Again, these aren't rules or commandments. He's just showing you the cause and effect, that if you're killing, people are going to be interested in killing you, right? And people are going to injure you and lock you up. If you're lying, you're going to be seen as undependable and unreliable. If you're having sexual misconduct, it's going to damage your relationships. You can get sexually transmitted diseases. You can get injured and beat up and even murdered. If you're lying and stealing, this is going to cause difficulties in your life. Or if you're taking substances that cause heedlessness, you're polluting your body and your mind with substances, this is going to cause difficulties and calamity in your life too. So you can have this wealth of knowing that, hey, I'm making wise decisions about my moral conduct. And the Buddha is describing this as a wealth. And then this wealth of learning, which is where you're interested in learning the teachings and growing and developing and doing this inner work. This is a wealth of learning that you learn and you remember. When you first start learning, your mind's more polluted, so it's usually challenging for you, oftentimes, to remember the teachings early on. But if you go through classes more than one time, if you read the books more than one time, if you talk to your teachers and get help, this is actually going to improve the condition of your mind, because you're gradually training your mind. Your mind's becoming less and less polluted. So each time you learn in those classes and courses and retreats, you're being able to retain more and more of the wisdom from those learning experiences. This wealth of generosity is being willing to give and share. Sometimes this is a reason why we're not generous in the unenlightened state, is because we're trying to be so monetarily wealthy. We think if we hold on to our money and we hold on to our possessions, we're going to be rich and wealthy and people are going to look up to us. And somehow this is going to lead to our happiness if we hold on to our money. But holding on to the money is going to lead to your unhappiness. Holding on to your material possessions is actually going to lead to your unhappiness, right? So you can understand that practicing generosity, where you're giving and sharing your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources without any expectation of anything in return, is actually leading to your joy, because it's training your mind to let go and eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And then the wealth of wisdom. Oftentimes the Buddha puts the most significant thing last when he's listing out these lists. That's why we talked about those 8 stains. The most significant one was the last one. He tends to do that. He kind of ends with the most significant one. The most significant wealth that you could acquire would be the wealth of wisdom. This money is going to come and go. These material possessions that you have, they're going to come and go. They are all impermanent. But by the time you cultivate the wisdom to get to enlightenment, that wisdom that you took to get to enlightenment, it's permanent. You will never forget what it took you to get to enlightenment. Whatever you learned and grew and developed to be able to get to this enlightened mental state where you no longer experience any anger or sadness or frustration or those other discontent feelings, you will never forget that wisdom. You will always retain that wisdom to understand what it took, because you're living that life day in and day out. And this is the real true wealth. Like the Buddha was saying, the ignorance is the worst of all stains. Well, the opposite of that is wisdom. And that's the best of all wealth. Having the wealth of wisdom, you can make wise decisions in your life that is producing wholesome results. Okay, sure you got money. Okay, sure you got lots of cars. Sure you've got lots of land or any other kind of material possessions. So what? Right? Many people have those things. But if you can get to the wisdom where you can make wise decisions that is producing harmonious relationships in your life, and your life is at ease and everything's peaceful and joyful, that's a real wealth, right? You can be rich and wealthy and still angry and disgruntled and hostile and bitter. And your life is miserable, even though you have money and you have wealth. But if you have this wisdom that the Buddha is talking about, the wisdom of the path to enlightenment, your life's going to be at ease, whether you have money or you don't have money. Right? Whether you have material possessions or you don't have material possessions. If you have this wisdom, this is the true wealth of what's going to help you to produce joyful life and a peaceful life. Okay, so any questions on this chapter? You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
But sometimes for example, I'm a bit greedy with my money right now, or a bit like holding on my money, because I don't have so much now. And I think it's a reason also because I'm afraid that I don't have the chances, for example, learning these teachings, because my phone, I cannot buy a new phone, new laptop. I cannot come back to Thailand. These are anxious. So can I also let that go? Or what do you think about that?
Yeah. So like we were talking last week on Sunday, I think you were in class where we were talking about the middle way. Even with something like generosity, you need to practice it from the middle way. So I know you're a young guy. I know you're interested in staying in Thailand for a pretty long time, and you have a certain savings, a certain limited budget that you need to pay attention to. And this is wise decision making, to pay attention to your money, to be able to live and stay here for whatever amount of time that you're interested to stay here. But you're not interested in holding on to it tightly. So what you might choose to do is start giving a little bit of that in different places. And when I say a little bit, like frequency of practicing generosity is more important than the amount. So knowing that you have limited resources, maybe what you do is 5 or 10 baht each day when you're going around Thailand, whether it's like at the mall or other places you go where you see like a little donation box, just put 5 baht, just put 10 baht, just a little tiny bit, 2 or 3 times a day, 5 baht here, 10 baht there, even 1 baht, just put 1 baht, just the action of giving and letting go. This is going to transform your mind. So I'm sure you could probably afford 5 or 10 baht per day. And if you have little 5 baht coins or 1 baht coins and you just put them in those little things, you're constantly having to let go and let go and let go and let go. So this won't affect your ability to have the income that you need in order to support your food and clothing and basic necessities, but it will train your mind to let go. So it's not the amount that you give, it's about the action of giving and letting go. And then make sure you're doing this in the middle way, because you need to practice discernment even with something like generosity, because if you did it excessively, you're not going to have food and shelter and clothing and water for yourself. So you need to find the middle way with that. And that's why if you don't have much money, being a young person, and you're not working right now, then you still need to practice generosity. And if it's the money that you feel like you're holding on to, 1 baht, 5 baht here and there will help you. But you can also practice generosity through sharing your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, things like this. So you could, I've seen you here help out like sweeping and cleaning and things like this, or other places that might need your help. You can share that as well. So maybe you look at that and see how you can be generous with those kinds of things.
Or for example, if I eat somewhere, I give 5 baht more. It's also a way to do that, right?
If you eat somewhere, what?
If I eat somewhere and I give 5 baht more,
like a tip.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that you can do that kind of stuff too. That's generosity, because you're not required to tip. Even giving an extra 5 baht, that's you giving something, and you're training your mind to let go.
For example, I'm often walking through the streets and looking for a cheap to eat, 50 baht normally. But this is not so easy for me, because I get stressed, take a lot of time to look for a place. Sometimes I don't, I think, oh, come on, I have hungry, I eat now there, 100 baht, and I think, okay, could be less. What I can do about this, just let that go. Because I'm so much, I think it seems like I'm so much, I still have money, so I can live here 1 more, 2 more, maybe 3 more months. But I'm like, really like, not spend so much.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. Like what you can do is you can purchase food and then give it away to people. So like every morning the monks are walking around typically, between 6:30, 7:30, they're usually walking on the street. You can give food, or you could take food to an orphanage or a homeless shelter or something like this, and you can give away food, because now you have to purchase it, which is using your money, and now you have to give it away. This is something that you can do to train your mind to let go and not hold on to these things tightly. So the combination of your breathing mindfulness meditation and your generosity, this will train your mind to let go. And it's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It's not like you practice generosity once and it's going to fix everything. You need to consistently practice generosity each day. When the Buddha describes like what should you be doing on a daily basis to get to enlightenment, he talks about generosity first. He talks about moral conduct, which is improving the way you interact in your moral conduct, and meditation. All 3 of these things need to be practiced every single day. So if you're not practicing generosity every day, you can look in your life and figure out where can you insert a little bit of generosity. And sometimes you can practice generosity just 5 seconds, 10 seconds here and there, but you would like to do that consistently throughout your day. Like just holding the door for somebody when they're walking out the door, that's generosity. It takes you all of 5 seconds to do that. But since you're having this difficulty around money, and you're feeling stress around the money, that's why I focused on suggesting to you to give 1 baht, 5 baht, 10 baht, buying food, giving it away. Whereas if you were like holding on to your clothes, for example, and you were like, I just, I'm so obsessive about my clothing, I would suggest you give away some of your clothing and give it away to people. So you can practice generosity wherever you see your mind holding on to something. You can practice generosity. Like if you don't want anybody touching your computer or your phone, you can share it. Say, here, you can use my phone, no worries. And this will train your mind to let go. So wherever you see your mind holding on to anything, whether it's money or clothes or any other material possessions, if you share those things, your mind will let them go more readily and more easily.
But with whom to share? For example, I have some clothes I don't need, and I thought about, but I don't know who I can give this. just go to someone and say, hey, you want my clothes? There are not so many homeless people. I didn't see so many.
So there's different orphanages and places like this that you can go. They'll usually accept donations. Sometimes students give things to me and I give them out to my Thai family or friends or people like this. So if you talk to people, you'll be able to find a place that'll accept what it is that you have to offer. You're welcome. You have a question?
Oh, okay. So my question is, when I practice generosity, can I be selective, like who I give, or like everyone should be equal?
So the Buddha teaches that when you're practicing generosity, it's wise, if you're at least practicing towards like monks and teachers, to practice generosity with virtuous practitioners, because there's generosity, which is just giving and sharing with anybody. And then there's generosity, which is directed towards the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha. We refer to this as merit. Okay, so when you're practicing just basic generosity, this is producing wholesome results for you, that it's improving the quality of your mind. But where you're practicing generosity is going to improve the quality of that wholesome action. So for example, say you gave some food to a dog. This is helping you because you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment within your own mind, and it's helping this dog too. Right? But let's just say you gave food to an orphan that was 5 years old and that was struggling to have food. This is a higher quality of wholesome karma or wholesome results, because you're now helping this human being to sustain their life, and that person has the opportunity to get to enlightenment, and now you helping them sustain their life, it's improving the potential of them being able to get to enlightenment and helping the world. So you can look at the different options that you have in terms of where you practice generosity, whether it's just generosity in general. You can look at like, well, what would be the best way for me to practice generosity here? And maybe you would like to practice generosity by giving food to animals. I do that too. I have food in this room that I share with the dogs here, but I also practice generosity towards human beings and things like this. So you can look at that and decide for yourself what you would like to contribute to and how you would like to help other people through your generosity. When the Buddha talks about making offerings to teachers and ordained practitioners, he always prefaces it with virtuous practitioners. Virtuous meaning practicing good, wholesome moral conduct. So if you can imagine, during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were thousands and thousands of people studying with him, and not everybody was practicing the teachings closely. So we might think that every Buddhist monk or every teacher is practicing the teachings closely, but this isn't actually true. That's permanence, and that doesn't actually exist. You'll see monks that are smoking cigarettes, that are hitting dogs, that are gambling, that are using drugs and intoxicants and making other unwise decisions. And the Buddha teaches that if you support that, if you give generosity to them, you're supporting that activity. But these virtuous practitioners who are learning the teachings, who are training their minds, who are sharing the teachings and helping others to be able to learn the teachings, if you're supporting them and making generous offerings to them, now it's an improvement in the result that you're experiencing as a result of your generosity. So you're not interested in judging people. You're not interested in looking down on people and be like, he smokes cigarettes, there's no way I'm giving him anything. This is like, judgment towards that person. But you can practice discernment where it's like, oh, okay, I see that monk over there smoking cigarettes and hitting animals and gambling, and I see this monk over here meditating, and they're helping people to learn the teachings that lead to enlightenment. I think I'm going to make my offering over here, and this would be helpful for you and all of the world. So you can look at those kinds of things, whether you're just practicing regular generosity with just anybody, or you're practicing generosity towards teachers and ordained practitioners. You can look at where can I have the most impact, and where would it be most wise for me to send my generous offerings towards. Yep. Okay. Let's see if we have any questions here. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. So what I'm going to do here is end class by just thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for coming to class. Thank you for being interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, kind of in a more beginning class, a more introductory class, today at 1 o'clock would be ideal for you because there's an introduction to the Path to Enlightenment course, introduction to the teachings of the Buddha. And I'm going to be teaching it here starting at 1, and we're going to go till 4. And then I'm also going to be live streaming it as well. So those of you guys online, you can learn there. And if you can't learn live, it's recorded, so you can watch it and learn that way as well. And then tomorrow is the group learning program. We're going to be in chapter 7, which is the 5 precepts, Householder's Guide to Daily Practice. And then on Monday, we're going to be starting the Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course from Monday at 9 o'clock onward. And again, we're going to be live streaming and recording all of those classes as well. So perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.